We're going to have a hearing on the recommendation for Department of Labor. And we'll start off with Klein. Is he here? Yes, there he is.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Edgar Klein. I'm a fiscal analyst with KRD. Today, I'll be presenting the Kansas Department of Labor budget summary. Drawing your attention to the first table labeled expenditures by fiscal year inversion, you'll note that this agency was approved for $11.8 million in SGF in fiscal year 2026. They maintain this estimate for agency fiscal year 2026. The figure that changes is the all funds amount that has been steadily rising. Note that the fiscal year 2026 all funds amount increased by $40 million between the fiscal year 2026 approved amount and the agency revised estimate. This, as you'll see in greater detail on page 8, is due to rising expenditure on the unemployment insurance. Turning to page 2, these are the highlighted changes in the budget. In fiscal year 2026, the legislature reappropriated $1.6 million in SGF. In fiscal year 2027, the agency has 2 enhancement requests. The first being the Wizard of Jobs program for $250,000 SGF, reoccurring, as well as 2 FTE positions. Additionally, the agency is requesting a reoccurring enhancement of $330,000 to pay increased days storage fees negotiated by OITS. You'll find additional information for both these requests on page 12. Turning the page to page 3, there are several summary of expenditure tables. The first being the 10-year expenditure history graph with the big green all funds line. Note that this rise in expenditures is tied to COVID. To give you a better breakdown of what those expenditures are, I'd like to draw your attention to the expenditures by category table on page 5. Note that the state operations makes up 19% of the total expenditures, while the remaining 80% has to do with state aid and assistance. Those are very broad categories, so we've broken them out for you on page 5 and 6. On page 7, you'll see that the state aid and assistance directly correlates to the employee benefits. Turning your attention to page 8, the expenditures by program is now in a condensed view. Furthermore, on the bottom of the page, you'll find the FTE count for the agency. Note that there is a decrease of 44 FTE positions from the fiscal year 2026 approved to the agency estimate. This is because the agency had estimated more positions than it needed for the employment insurance modernization project. So while you may see FTE go down, the expenditures on salaries and wages remain fairly consistent because there wasn't a significant amount of additional workers added. Moving along to page 9, you'll find more information about the agency's largest fund, the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. This is just a brief synopsis of what the fund is and how it's administered. Moving along to the analysis portion of the budget, we start on page 10. First, some notable changes in the approved budget that occurred in 2025. The legislature added $35.5 million from the Employment Security Fund, or for unemployment insurance payments for fiscal year 2026. Also, the legislature added language to update the definition of temporary unemployed to include individuals covered by a collective bargaining agreement that have been laid off from full-time work and reasonably expects to resume full-time work within 6 months. Additionally, there was language added exempting qualified individuals from enrolling in My Reemployment and limiting unemployment benefits to 8 weeks. This was done because several manufacturers in Kansas had laid off employees with the intention of rehiring them. Temporary unemployed and qualified individuals are technical definitions found in statute KSA 44705. Now addressing the table at the top of the page, you'll note that I mentioned SGF reappropriation earlier in the presentation. That is $1.6 million attributable to the Unemployment Insurance Modernization Project. The agency carried forward this balance and unspent SGF money slated to provide further enhancements to the UITE system. That's Unemployment Insurance Technology Enhancement. This is for our new website and interface. These enhancements will provide solutions to gaps not realized until after the system was completed. According to the agency, these enhancements will provide better access and service Kansas claimants and employers. Now looking below, there's a table. Now looking below the table, there are other changes in financing. The first starting on page 10. The agency revised estimate includes an increase of $50.1 million in federal funds to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. This is offset by a decrease in the Employment Security Trust Account, $5 million, and the Employment Security Administration Fund, $756,000. Again, more about this fund can be found on page 9. Moving on to labor market information. The agency revised estimate includes a decrease of $710,000. For all other adjustment, the agency revised estimate includes an increase of $10,000. This concludes 2026 analysis. May I move on to 27?
Question? Okay, do it afterwards. Go ahead and move on.
Okay. Turning the page. Fiscal year 2027 analysis begins on page 11. You'll see a familiar looking table. However, the agency has 2 enhancements requests for this year. The first being the Wizard of Jobs program. The agency is requesting an enhancement of $265,000 SGF in 2 FTE positions. This is for the Toto Wizard of Jobs program, today's occupations, tomorrow's opportunities. This is an intuitive career coaching site that will engage students early and often in career exploration and planning activities, encouraging discovery of interests, talents, as well as identifying pathways and experiences that lead to real employment opportunities in Kansas. The other agency request is for IT support. The agency request is for $330,000 SGF for fiscal year 2027, reoccurring annually to pay for increased data storage fees negotiated by OITS. OITS is in the process of negotiating data storage services for the state of Kansas. The cost of this contract contains an additional 27 cents per gigabyte, more than the current cost. KDOL estimates this to be an additional cost to the agency of $27,000 per month, plus the 2% administrative fee of $540 for an ongoing annual total cost of $330,000. There were also a few notable changes in financing for the agency. The first having to do with the unemployment insurance program. The agency request includes an increase of $55.7 million in financing for the unemployment insurance program funded by federal funding. For administration, the agency request includes a decrease of $1.9 million in financing. For workers' compensation, the agency requests a decrease of $1.5 million in financing. For labor market information, the agency request includes a decrease of $695,000 in financing. For industrial health and safety, the agency request includes a decrease of $160,000. And finally, for all other adjustments, the agency request includes an increase of $16,000. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I want to point out there are more programs that KDOL has listed. Sorry, I want to point out there are programs I briefly covered that KDOL maintains. And there, if you're looking for more information, this is found on the agency narrative on the Department of Budget's website. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edgar, thanks for that information. It's amazing how well you're prepared for this and how quick you can roll through this because, I don't know, maybe it's Friday, my brain's running a little bit slower. As I understand where we sit with each of the agency budgets, the reappropriations and any enhancements requests are currently out of the budget. And so either this committee or Ways and Means or some committee would have to add that back into the budget to move it forward. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that is also my understanding. The motion was to delete all enhancements.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Very good. Thank you. Now she'll be able to hear you.
Yeah. Senator Harsher, you have a question?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do have a question on point number 6 on page 13. Maybe you said this and I missed it, but you said, hold on here. It's a reduction in contractual services due to lack of transfer of funds. What were I'm sorry, can you give me a few more details on that contractual services?
Mr. Chair, yes, this is laid out in statute. So this is a transfer made to the Department of Administration to make sure that the fund has funds for administration of the program.
Okay, sure. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? The FTEs went from approved in 26 of 444 down to 400. Is that correct? The actual, or
Mr.
the
Chair,
agency request?
that is correct.
Okay. Any other questions on 26 and moving to 27? Okay. With that, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Next conferee would be Secretary Schultz.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Secretary Amber Schultz of the Kansas Department of Labor. I have with me today Deputy Secretary Amy Selm, our Chief Fiscal Officer Don Palmberg, and our new Government Affairs Liaison Nigel Haben.
Welcome.
Thank you. We submitted written testimony. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Questions? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here and for being willing to answer some questions for me. We decreased by 40 employees, and as this says, it ended up not needing quite as many for the unemployment modernization that you thought. However, we did appropriate funding in 26 for that. Do you know how much we appropriated for those employees?
I will defer to my CFO for that number, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm Dawn Palmberg, Chief Financial Officer for the Kansas Department of Labor. Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it was made up of mostly call center staff. We were not sure how many people we would need to assist claimants with the new system, and it turned out that we did not. However, that funding was federal funding.
Okay, so all of that in the new, all of that funding was then federal. So no SGF dollars went to pay those employees?
No.
Okay. Was that money required to be returned to the federal government, or are they allowing you to keep it even though you didn't need the employees?
We are allowed to keep it and use it for other purposes within the scope of the grant.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Welcome.
Secretary Schultz, I know we went through a serious situation of fraud during COVID, somewhere $600–700 million worth. Has any of that been recouped back to the agency or back to the unemployment fund?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for that question, Chairman, if I may. So we experienced, as every other state did during the pandemic, multi-international organized crime ring fraud. And so we actually had an audit through the Unemployment Modernization and Improvement Council, and that number ended up being about $460 million. What we have done since that time is in four very broad categories. The first one being working with our law enforcement partners, both at state and federal, so Homeland Security, the Secret Service, the Office of Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Labor. And those larger crime rings, because they are multinational, we might not know who they are, but they are taking the lead on those large cases. And oftentimes, we don't know if there's even a case until something has happened in the courts, obviously, for obvious reasons. We are also working with banks, and so we've recovered money through banks from fraudulent transactions from the trust fund to fraudsters. We also are tracking our own prosecution. So we have presented about 430 cases to prosecutors. Most of those, about 94% of them have been accepted or are in a pending status, so there's restitution ordered, and lots of people have actually paid the full amount to avoid the prosecution. So, and then lastly, we're working with Treasurer Johnson for unclaimed property, so some banks that still have fraudulent accounts, they send those into unclaimed property, and so we're working to gather those funds as well.
Dollar amount?
So OIG, USDOL, OIG has estimated that of the $600 billion in fraud nationally, about 2 to 4% of that have been recovered so far, and Kansas meets with those metrics.
So we've only recovered 2 to 4% potentially of 600 million because,
460 million.
yeah, 400, well, there's definitely some differences of opinion on how, depending on who investigated that, where that number actually ended up. But I know that when we looked at that number at that time per capita, we were really leading the charge in the amount of fraud in Kansas compared to other states. I realized that it was a national type of a thing, but we definitely, as a per capita percentage, lost a lot more than many other states did. So I'm just going to put down 2 to 4% is roughly what we've recovered. If I may continue, I have a few more questions. Thank you. You have a enhancement request for Wizard of Jobs. Would you tell me a little bit about that? Is that something that's already going on, something that's a new program? And help me understand why 2 new FTE would be required.
Sure. So, Chairman, if I may, the Wizard of Jobs is actually a reimagine of a website that we coordinated with the Regents and the Department of Education many years ago called Career Nav. We decided that it was past its life, and so we have created this new platform called Toto, today's occupations, tomorrow's opportunities. Forgive me, it's still early. I'm not fully caffeinated. Yes, thank you. So what it really is it's a very intuitive framework for middle school students, high school students, and college-age students as they start to explore their career interests. So they go into this website, they say, I would like to, I'm going to choose some lifestyle choices. I would like to live in a house or an apartment. I want to drive a Yugo, or I want to drive a Ferrari. And so then it goes through, figures out kind of what that lifestyle net needs to be in order to them to live like that. And then it goes and explores their interests and skills. So like my children, they like video games. And so it might go through and say, you could be a great computer programmer, or you could be a drone operator. And then it provides suggestions of both jobs and education paths that they can take here in Kansas to fulfill those goals.
So this is the Career Nav then something that we've been paying for all along? And if so, switching it to Wizard of Jobs or to Toto, I'm trying to figure out why this is an enhancement request if it is a continuation of something we've been doing.
Right, so we do have the Toto is live now. It's functional, it works great. We have schools adopting it. What we would like this enhancement request to be for is to enhance it and also go out and market it to schools. And so we would, the enhancement is related to both of those.
Okay, thank you for that. See if anybody else has any questions before I drum up some more.
Senators online, do you have any questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Who is it? No one, no, no questions today? Okay. I'm going to ask one question on your information technology. It says we're increasing the data storage fees, and that has been negotiated with OITS, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And okay. Went to, okay, 27 cents, okay. Okay. No question, other questions right now? Senator Owens, you have any questions?
I might actually, now that I think about it, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So this is the first that I'm seeing this OITS increase. Is this something that's specific to you or specific to every agency? And do I expect to see an enhancement request across the board? Or do you even know the answer to that?
I do not know the answer to that, but conveniently, OITS is here in the audience that perhaps could answer that question. But I can answer it related to the Department of Labor. So our primary source of funding is federal administrative grants. And so we have to actually prepare for those long before we even prepare for state fiscal years. So we deal with calendar years, federal fiscal years, state fiscal years. And so by the time we had submitted our budget request to USDOL so that they could model in their resource justification model. We had yet to receive what that funding is going to be. So we are hopeful that going into this next year, we can put that cost in, and we will be paid for that, everything except for the 2% cost to OITS to manage that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The reason I asked that question was, in previous years, I've had that question by agencies, and I want to make sure that was negotiated with both parties before the budget hearing. That was my concern. Okay. I don't think I have any further questions on that, and there's anything from the, not seeing anything there. So with that,
You ready for, if you're done with her and if you're ready for a motion?
yes, we're going to, thank you very much for being here today, and Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, based on the knowledge we have, I'm very hesitant to add any new FTEs at this point. And so for the time being, I would make the motion that we pass out the Kansas Department of Labor as presented to us today.
Okay. Do we have a second from?
Second.
Second? We have a second. We have a motion been made and second. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate the information. So our next agency budget would be, as kind of a clue to what you were saying, the Office of Information Technology Services. And so we had Mr. Fisher. Get the right paperwork here.
Good morning, Chairperson Alley, members of the committee. My name is James Fisher. I am the Assistant Director for Information Systems with the Kansas Legislative Research Department. You should have 4 documents from me. OITS is a little unique in that we have 2 budget summaries, one for on budget, one for off budget, and I'll go into a little bit what that means here in a moment. You'll also have a budget committee report. It's a little early for you. Generally, I generate that document after you've done with your recs, but since we had the state budget committee give recs already, that kind of summarizes what they've done so far. And then I also have something called a shorthand report that compares the state budget, the special committee on state budget to the gov rec as well. So we're going to start with the on budget OITS budget summary, which it'll say Office of Information Technology Services, and then it'll have a subheading that says budget summary agency request on budget. For a little bit of context, OITS is with us today, we also have Jeff Maxson, Chief Information Technology Officer, Brian Reeder, their Chief Fiscal Officer, and then John Godfrey, the Chief Information Security Officer as well.
Thank you.
So for context, OITS's primary function is to provide data, communication services, and other services to state agencies. They serve 95 agencies, 17,000 data connections, 19,000 Microsoft Office 365 licenses, and 14,000 phone users. As I mentioned, their budget is on and off budget expenditures. So the on budget expenditures, which is what we're going to look at first here, are primarily for statewide IT infrastructure projects, including substantial upgrades and repairs to the state's network, as well as cybersecurity initiatives. These are mostly paid for with upgrades with SGF, State General Fund, or in some cases, federal funds as well. The off-budget expenditures, which we'll talk about next, are primarily for services rendered for other state agencies. Basically, they're subscribing to the services. You heard a little bit about that with KDOL and the data storage costs there a little while ago. They'll pay for the services offered by OITS. This helps avoid double counting of the expenditure, so you'll see it as off budget here, but you'll see it as on budget in other state agencies. So, all right. So on page 1 is the general summary comparing to other state agencies. The on budget SGF request for 2026 is $31,241,000. And then we're going to go ahead and jump to page 2, which kind of gives you a summary of the agency's policy snapshot, as well as enhancement and supplemental requests. They had no supplementals in 26, but they do have 2 enhancement requests in 27, which we'll talk about a little bit more, which I get into the actual budget analysis tables as well. Page 3 shows a 10-year trend. This is generally SGF, and the all funds in this case is mostly federal funds with a little bit of a special fund called GIS contracting. It's like $60,000. You'll see that kind of like increase there in the past couple of years. It's primarily almost entirely driven by cybersecurity initiatives that you all as a body have voted on, including an enhancement request 2 years ago for a cybersecurity operations center for 24/7, and then 2024 SB 291 had some special funding, which we'll address a little bit more later on as well. We're going to go ahead and jump to page 9 and just get into the 2026 analysis, since I've got 2 of these to go over with you today. So, for context, the total revised estimate. Actually, I'm gonna stick to on budget here. I don't want to confuse the 2 together. We'll go at the end. So the agency's revised on budget estimate for 26 is $34 million. 31.2 million is SGF. This is an increase of about $300,000 above the 2026 legislatively approved amount. And this is primarily attributable to the agency receiving $1.5 million for state and local cybersecurity grant programs. And then that's offset by a decrease in ARPA spending related to an enterprise licensure platform as well. Item 1 on page 9 shows the approved budget for FY 2025. OHS, again, is unique. They had 2 bills that appropriated funding for it. So the one you're probably most familiar with is SB 125, which appropriated $16.2 million. And then item 2 shows that bill I referenced earlier, 2024 SB 291, which appropriated $15 million, all SGF, in 2025, and 2024, 2026, excuse me. The agency had no reappropriations, and they had no supplemental requests in 26. Looking at the other changes, item 3 on page 9 still shows that $1.5 million increase for federal funds for the state and local cybersecurity grants program. This program was created by the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and is administered by the Kansas Information Security Office, which is housed within OITS. And it can be used for things like replacing end-of-life equipment, networking equipment, implementing multi-factor authentication. So basically, like, do you use a PIN number, or do you have like a text, or use a Microsoft Authenticator to like tell the computer to go with your password, basically, and cybersecurity awareness training. On page 10, item 4 shows an increase of $37,000 in salaries and wages for all SGF. This is due to the agency doing some shifting some staff from other program areas, and this resulted in a net increase of 1 on-budget FTE, basically an on-budget FTE, an off-budget FTE moved to an on-budget position here within it, and then there's some minor changes to like fringe health insurance costs, that kind of thing as well. Item 5 shows that $1.2 million decrease in ARPA funding. This is due to the completion of the initial development of the enterprise licensure platform by Excella for non-cabinet agencies. So their total ARPA spend for 26 is $2.4 million. They still have some network infrastructure modernization, security upgrade programs they're doing. You'll see those go away in 27. And then the funding that supports this platform you'll start seeing in the off-budget expenditures as well. You'll also probably see a reference to it in the Department of Administration, I think is the entity that's actually like primarily working with this now. In item 6 shows all of their adjustments, totaling a decrease of $22,000. Do we have any questions on 2026, or would the chair like me to move to 2027?
Any questions on 26? Nothing? Okay. Let's move on, 27.
So the 27 analysis is on page 11. The agency's total on-budget request for 27 is $41 million. 39.5 million is SGF, which is an increase of about 7.4 million above the 2026 approved, or a 22% increase. This is primarily attributable to the agency's enhancement requests. Item 1 shows the approved budget, once again, with the 1.2 million ARPA decrease from 26 incorporated into that. Item 2 shows the agency's first enhancement request of $8 million. This is all SGF, and this is for contract transition costs associated with a new data center as a service contract with Unisys. This is a one-time spend to basically cover a gap in the cost of services that result of the new contract being finalized after the budget instructions and cost indices were published, basically. So the initial estimates for what it was going to cost to deliver the service were lower than what it's actually going to cost due to a number of factors. And so there's basically a gap in what it's going to cost to pay for that. So they're requesting $8 million total to fill that gap for 27. This is somewhat related to the data storage costs, but that was a known item on there. So there is a cost indices for the data storage fee that we were discussing during KDOL. It's 27 cents per gigabyte in the cloud storage areas. So, and agencies were made aware of that as they're prepping for this budget cycle. Item 3, let me get on my right page of my notes here, is the second enhancement request, which is for $250,000. This would be to employ 3 FTE to assist with non-cabinet agencies that don't have existing IT staff or resources. And then on pages 12, item 4, 5, and 6 are identical to what was referenced in the 2026 budget year. You're seeing them twice because we make our comparisons to the approved, and so they're new compared to the approved. You'll see it again in 27. Would the chair like me to go through this again for 27, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So go ahead with.
And then item 7 is all their adjustments that shows there's about a $13,000 decrease just in minor fluctuations within the budget itself. That concludes my presentation for the OITS on budget. Do you want me to stand for questions on that?
Stand for questions on the on budget, and then we'll move to the off budget. Senator Owens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James, thanks for the presentation thus far. On the data center service stopgap, this $8 million, if this is filling a gap, what was the total contract?
I'll have to defer to the CETO. It was 12 million at one point. I want to say it's 24, but I'm not certain that they can probably answer better than me on that one.
Okay, yeah,
So
that's a bit concerning. Let me go back here. I have one other question for you. Does the 2024 SB 391, the 15 million, does that have an end date, or is that going to be perpetually in this budget listed in that format?
I will have to talk to a revisor about that. So it is in the base in 27 now.
Okay.
And so there are provisions in that bill that do provide additional funding for OITS, but it's not a set amount. There is some other provisions in 291 that kind of talk about like how to calculate that and where that would come from. But as far as I know, I can't really speak to if those processes have been engaged in by the executive branch.
Okay, I'll ask that question to the agency here in a minute as well. So thank you. That's all.
Any questions?
And I should note for, so the Special Committee on State Budget did remove the enhancement request. It's also not present in the governor's recommendation as well. The other change from the agency budget as presented was that 1 FTE increase in the on budget for 26 and 27 was also removed, just based on another global motion that says remove all new FTEs. So,
Back to, I'm going to ask you, and then we'll probably ask the same question again.
Sure.
The $8 million, my understanding, then we can see that pass through to the other agencies they perform as an increase. Is that correct?
so so if the enhancement was approved, in 27, you wouldn't see that from other agencies. If it's, so in 28, you would see that in other agencies' budget because it would be an adjusted cost indices. Not to say it is possible that if the enhancement's not approved this year, that they could still do a modification and have the cost pass through into 27 as well. But then you would have probably a number of supplemental requests next budget cycle to account for that by each individual agency, because it would be off budget at that point, yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, but we should look for that to be in the agencies' budgets, the other agencies they serve budgets in the next.
You won't see it, you'll see one reference to it this year, but you won't see it in any other budgets generally. For portions of this, you will see that storage cost, that it was known, and that is in the cost indices, reflected in that, so.
All right. Anything else?
Do you want me to move on to the off budget, or you want to have a presentation from them on the on budget?
We've got all the questions, I think, on the on budget. Let's move to the off budget.
Okay. All right, just as a reminder, we classify these expenditures because they account for payments from other state agencies to OITS. So it's just essentially a pass-through. We're going to, so this document looks a little different. It doesn't have the comparison table on the front to the entire state budget because there's not a lot of off budget in the state of Kansas. So it'd pretty much just be like a big pie that says OITS on it and a little bit of D of A as well. So we're going to go ahead and you'll see the page 2 shows just kind of a policy snapshot. Since they're off budget, there are changes and increases, but they're not supplementals and enhancements. It's just changes in cost indices. They might have one-off purchases they do for other state agencies. So this is just kind of showing some of the larger shifts here. This one happens to have a data center as a service cost increase associated with that as well. And then some new like enterprise licensure platform that I talked about previously is now moved to off budget. So things like that you'll see reflected in this budget. Those are the primary 2 drivers for the 2 years. And so we're going to go ahead and get into the actual analysis, and that's on page 8 for 2026 here. So the agency's revised off-budget estimate for 2026 is $82.2 million. It's an increase of $15.7 million above the 2026 approved amount, so about 23%. Item 1 shows the approved off-budget amount is for 25 was $66.5 million. There are no reappropriations. And so in item 2 shows a $9 million increase for vendor costs associated with the data center as a service contract. According to the agency, this increase is a result of the vendor doing hardware refreshes. So we entered in this contract, I think 7 to 9 years ago. It's older hardware. Part of the contract now is to refresh it and have new data center, new servers, new tools effectively for use by the state. And so agencies are actually charged with the reuse because it's a service generally. So item 3 shows the funding shift for the enterprise licensure project that was referenced in the on-budget presentation. This was done through the vendor Acela. So it's an off-budget increase of $2.5 million for ongoing operational costs, system maintenance, license fees, and technical support for the platform, as well as possibly bringing other state agencies into it. This is things like the Real Estate Commission, Board of Nursing that have like licensure renewals associated with it. It's an enterprise platform for them to use that to get onto one system. On page 9, item 4 shows a $2 million increase for Microsoft Azure cloud computing utilization by state agencies. Azure is used to provide data storage, application and database hosting, and other cloud computing options. Cost for the solution varies based on usage, time, data storage, and resources utilized. So if you're spinning up a virtual machine, you can have a high-end virtual machine, you can have a low-end virtual machine doing an operation for you kind of thing, and that cost will fluctuate based on that. Item 4 shows an increase of $1 million, all from off-budget special revenue sources, and this is a part of that staff realignment mentioned in on-budget. So these are 19 FTE positions to support basically the agency's efforts regarding cybersecurity generally. The agency indicated that 12 of the FTE are actually new, and the remainder are interns that previously existed, but for some reason in the accounting system, they're coded as half-time FTEs, and generally, I believe this would be counted as like 0 in that. So but it's reflecting in my reports as new FTEs functionally. Item 6 shows a $525,000 increase for increased cost and utilization of the ServiceNow product. This is a tool used for IT inventory and help desk solutions. Item 7 shows an increase to $500,000 for Cisco SmartNet desk phone upgrades. This upgrade enabled like WebEx voice calling, and you saw some new phones, not new phones, but a back-end change here in the Capitol even here recently. Item 8 shows an increase of $460,000 for additional Microsoft 365 licenses. Item 9 shows an increase of $200,000 for building rent. This is due to the agency underestimating its rent cost. They recently moved, I believe it was 2 years ago now, from the Armory over to Landon State Office Building here. And then item 10 shows my $460,000 decrease due to fluctuations in indirect costs related to like service, communication devices, supply purchases, utilities, vehicles, things like that. Are there questions on 26, or should I move on to 27?
Question on 26? Nothing showing up. Let's move to 27.
Okay. 27 looks a lot like 26, so this will be nice. I will note, in the analysis, I found an error. I was sitting back there that my list continued on. So it's continuing on from the last number on the 26th. So it'll start with 11. I'm going to try my best to reference that way, but my notes say 1, and I tend to follow my notes a lot here. So just drop the 1 if you can, if you hear me say that. So my apologies for that. I will fix it for when we post these online and as you get them for your future budget presentations. So the agency's total off-budget request for 2027 is $85.4 million. It's an increase of $18.9 million over the 2026 approved. So about 22% increase. Oh, sorry, 28% increase. Item 11 on your list shows a $12 million increase. This is for that data storage cost. So this is functionally a $3 million increase over 26, $12 million over the approved, but for the same thing. And then items 2 through 8 are identical to what was in 26. So like the Azure licenses, the Cisco SmartNet, all that's all the same here. And item 9 shows a $381,000 decrease just due to operational fluctuations for indirect costs, again, related to utilities, comms devices, vehicles, supply purchases, things like that. And that concludes my presentation on 27.
Any questions on 27? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just, James, just so that I'm making sure that I'm fully understanding, really the off-budget is what state agencies are paying OITS and its associated usage and cost?
Correct.
Okay.
To recover costs for providing the service. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from our online? No questions? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate you being here today and also for the briefing you gave me in the office.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, right now we'll hear from Jeff Maxton. Jeff is our Chief Information Technology Officer, and Chief Technology Officer will not be presenting.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Jeff Maxton. I am the Chief Information Technology Officer for the Executive Branch. With me, as James mentioned, I have our Chief Information Security Officer, John Godfrey, our Director of Finance, Brian Ryder, and our Chief of Staff, Jared Harson. I'll just give a quick rundown of the agency and some of our key accomplishments this past year. Our vision is seamless and secure access to digital government resources anywhere, anytime. And our mission is to deliver reliable, secure, and cost-efficient enterprise technology and services. So essentially, our core function is to provide IT and cybersecurity services to the state agencies, including both branches as well. We do provide some services. So as James kind of covered some of the highlights on the numbers, so I won't quite go into that. And as you heard, most of our budget is off budget. A few years ago, starting I believe in fiscal year 24, we made a shift in how we are doing cybersecurity in the state of Kansas, as it being a kind of a pay-to-play or chargeback model to making it being provided out to agencies at no cost. And that's why there's a shift to the appropriations model to make sure we can provide a consistent level of cybersecurity across the entire enterprise and not have the ones that can afford it get it and the ones that can't not get it. So that was a fundamental shift on how we're delivering cybersecurity services. And then, as James mentioned, there was a big change. House substitute for Senate Bill 291 further directed that we are going to fully consolidate all cybersecurity efforts under the Kansas Information Security Office by July 1, 2027. So that's where that $15 million started to come into play, was to start some of those functions of setting that foundation to absorb all of cybersecurity and be that central place for it. So some of our key successes from last year is we stood up a 24/7 security operations center. So we are watching the network 24/7 for security incidents. We do know bad actors know when we work and they operate when we're not working. So we need to be monitoring the network 24/7. So this was a direct response to the incident at the judicial branch. As we knew that occurred after hours, we needed to have people monitoring our network 24/7 from that perspective. So that went operational this year. We also went live with the first non-cabinet agency on the enterprise licensing platform. So the Kansas Real Estate Commission was the first agency. I believe we have about 10 more in various progression to get onto that platform. And with that, we will have a unified platform that most non-cabinet agencies that do professional licensure will be on. And that is being managed, and the contract is managed through OITS. Also this year, we completed a rather large engagement. House substitute for Senate Bill 291 required that we put together an IT integration plan to integrate all IT into OITS. We were required to turn that in yesterday, and we presented that to the Senate Ways and Means, House Legislative Modernization, and also JCIT. So we provided that. And that was a really deep dive in IT across the state on what it looks like, how much it's costing, and where the resources are across the state. So that was a huge undertaking, and we got that taken care of. We also hired the state's first chief data officer. So almost all agencies, their core missions and functions are delivered via using some sort of data, so we can make sure we're taking care of the citizens. And so data is really the crown jewels, and we need to have a dedicated effort on how we're taking care of data and how we're managing it in commonalities and standardizations. We also hired the state's first chief privacy officer. So again, we want to ensure we're maintaining our citizens' privacy with the data we're collecting. They know how it's being used, and we're treating it properly. So those are some huge wins for the state. We also conducted the first state large-scale cyber exercise in partnership with the National Guard, cities, counties, school districts. So we had a 2-week exercise, which was a red team, blue team. So we had people attacking a simulated network, and we were defending the network. And so we intermixed teams with all the different participants so people could build the relationships and collaboration. And we did that in August. And that was a huge success, and we want to continue to do those here in the future. And we've also had a thriving internship program. So last year we had approximately 10 interns come through work for us at various points in the year, and we flipped several of them into full-time positions, and that is something that has been a huge win for us as well. So a lot of success going in there. So kind of covering some of those 15 million appropriations. So one of the things we've been really doing is trying to upgrade cybersecurity infrastructure across all the agencies. We've gone in and done that. They have not had to make those expenditures. So we're going to be doing kind of the place where we will be able to assess, and we can do volume purchasing, so leveraging economy of scale. So we've done some significant upgrades across agency cybersecurity infrastructure. We've also introduced some new technologies to the enterprise, privilege access management being one of them. So admin rights are the crown jewels that bad actors are going for, because that's how they can get into the network everywhere and take all the data. We've put in an additional tool that helps better protect those across the enterprise. We've institute an endpoint device management platform so we can touch devices wherever they are, whether they're on our network or off. And we've also changed how we've done things. So we're drastically reducing the number of vulnerabilities we see across the network, and we can provide an enterprise picture of what that looks like to policymakers, the governor's office, so we know what is actually going on across the enterprise. And then another example of another enterprise tool is our endpoint detection and response. So this is basically the new version of antivirus. Every computer needs to have it. So we provide it by the enterprise. So we also get the volume purchase economies of scale. So when we purchase 18,000 licenses, we get a better rate than if an individual agency goes at 1,000 licenses. And so we estimate that's approximately about $1 million we're saving annually by doing it at the enterprise fashion. So those are just some of the key things we've accomplished. And also we're working on co-terming licenses so we can standardize licensing for some disparate tools to help drive some economies of scale. And then we've also secured some contractor and vendor support to help us implement some of these technologies quicker and faster than we could by ourselves. So some of the key highlights and where we're putting some of those appropriation dollars to for your awareness. And then some context around the data center. And I'll get that real quickly before some of the questions. So we had a contract with an organization or a company called Unisys for the past 7 years. I think that started about 2017. That contract was up this past October. So we went through the RFP process and put out a new bid for a new data center as a service. It was awarded back to Unisys, and so there are increased costs that we were having to address. And so you see some of the requests where we have to pay those increased costs, and that's why it shows up in our off budget. But then we've been asking for some on the on budget to cover some of that changes based on when we can set rates to bill the agencies, so we don't have to change things mid-year. But we did keep rates pretty flat for those 7 years with those agencies with the first data center service as a contract. And when that hit for due, unfortunately, we hit a bad timing with technology costs significantly increasing. We're using more resources from a technology side. And then we also hit it right at the time when tariffs were going on and off. And so the vendors were absorbing those tariffs and in turn increasing the costs on us. So we just hit at a bad time. So that is just one of the things that we're having to deal with from a technology perspective. So, but with that, I will stand for questions.
Questions? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your leave, I kind of have a handful. So, Jeff, first of all, thank you. I know the state has asked a tremendous amount of you and your organization over the last 2 years. And you talk about a monumental undertaking trying to fend off what happened at the judicial branch. And, well, I can only imagine what you guys have already fended off. So thank you for that. First of all, has the phone issue been resolved in this building? These new phones and all this extra money, and then phones not working for
Phone
days.
issues. I have not been made aware of phone issues.
Maybe it hasn't risen to your level yet.
We had just migrated from an old platform to a newer platform. So, but I haven't heard of specific issues being raised up to us yet.
Well, as of yesterday, my office assistant was able to call herself, and she was able to call in. But for the first 3 days of the session, no one could get into a number of the offices throughout the building. So
And that wasn't just our office.
no, that's what I mean.
My phone was ringing down to my other senator's office.
Okay,
It's been a confusion.
we will
Okay,
get
so-
back with you on that and address that.
Chances are, hopefully the people, you know what I mean? You've got good employees, they're handling that, and it didn't need to raise to your level, which is really what we hope for. Number of employees, we've obviously seen a significant number of employees increase. Are any of those employees remote, or is there an expectation that they're all here?
So most all of our employees are here. We do have a few remote employees that are very hard to find skill sets. And that is, I'm trying to go through the number in my head. We may have 7 that are fully remote, but those are very hard skill sets to find here in this region.
No, I understand. I don't get as hung up on that, especially in the IT world, as I would in the Department of Labor world or some of the other agencies.
I do strongly encourage being here because we're supporting the agencies. And so having a presence and having people in office is important.
Just 1 second to flip back to the on-budget side of things. So the 15 million a year that I was asking about for the 2024 House sub for 291, will that be eventually just built into your base budget? I mean, is that, I remember the bill, I remember passing the bill, I remember standing up the cybersecurity center and being absolutely blown away that we didn't have 24/7 coverage at the time. So I'm glad that we do. Is that just part of an ongoing expense that was built in?
Yes, sir. That's as we absorb and go to that fully cybersecurity centralized within the Kansas Information Security Office, that is going to be built into the base because, again, we want those services available to everybody and not through a chargeback where, we're in a pinch, we're not going to get these services and expose us to risk. So,
So back to this $8 million, the way that it was explained by our analyst versus you, I want to make sure that I understand. So this $8 million enhancement request is truly a one-time cost, am I understanding, for a contract renewal, basically?
yes. So when we awarded the new contract, it was in a period where we were in between setting rates. So we set rates for 2-year periods. And we try very hard not to raise rates mid-year on agencies because then they don't have it budgeted, things like that. That was just a request as a stopgap until we get to where we can set new rates back to the agency. So we're truly trying to drive to a consumption model. Our existing model was I could go into the environment, I could essentially request a server as big as I wanted, even though I didn't need it, and I can give it as much storage as I wanted, and they paid a flat rate for that. So we've had some exponential growth, and we're trying to get scaled back, like pay for what you use model. And so we're trying to transition to that, and that's where we'd be setting rates in to kind of capture that, to start making sure we're spending for exactly what we need and not over consuming. So that true consumption model we're trying to move. That request was a one-time request to get us to where we can set the new rates. It has been asked of me by the governor to try and find some efficiencies to cover that request, and that's why it was not in her budget.
Okay.
So,
And that, I mean, that makes sense. And yeah, basically what I'm understanding on this is on budget to fill the gap. But if it had been a year earlier, it would have been off budget and charged directly to the agency. So
yes, sir.
regardless, the state's going to pay this bill, whether it's through another state agency or directly to you guys?
Yes, sir. And that's why it does show up both on and off, is because we have to pay it no matter what.
Okay, on the, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me go down my rabbit hole. On the professional services non-cabinet, this additional 250 and 3 FTEs, first of all, I'm pretty well objecting to any new FTEs, so don't take that personally. I think the state has so many FTEs. We're actually third per capita in the nation for the number of public employees, so very hesitant to expand that. Tell me, how have we been handling this previously without these 3 FTEs, and why they are so important?
So it's more of, as we have started absorbing some of the non-cabinet agencies that don't have IT staff, we're starting to provide more services. So I'm needing some more resources. And again, this goes back to the one-time ask was so I could help build, and then we will be setting a new rate structure to recapture their salaries after we get them in place and functioning for that fiscal year. We have some other ways we can try and accomplish that, which we're going to explore in terms of maybe specific agreements with agencies for specific services. But it's more of, as we've taken on more responsibility, we need more capacity is essentially where that is from, sir.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because I definitely want to explore all possibilities before we approve the additional funding and the additional FTEs. But thanks for helping me understand that. We're going to pay that $8 million no matter what. Doesn't matter whether it's on budget, off budget. And so we'll see if we can't get that included in your budget. And I think that concludes all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And we do have a, Senator Horscher, is that right? Senator?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is this: I know it seems like for a time period there, Kansas as well as other states, have been catching up to the cybersecurity threats. Can you tell me like where we are in terms of, are we caught up and manageable, or where are we, in the scheme and in the overall structure of things in terms of addressing cybersecurity issues?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you for the question. That's a great question, Senator. So we have made significant progress, and I believe we're getting to where we're in a manageable state. The problem is every time we make an improvement, bad actors make an improvement. So we're we're always trying to get ourselves in a better place no matter what and reduce risk to the state. So it is a constant threat that's not going to go away. We're up against nation states that have more resources, more capabilities. So we're continuing to make progress, and we're in what I would call a manageable state, more so than we've been the past couple of years. And so, in terms of knock on wood, we're catching things and we're knocking them down before they're getting into our environments, and we're being successful in that. But it is a constant. As they improve, we need to improve. Introduction of AI and stuff just makes our work that much more important to try and stay on top of it.
Very
Senator,
good,
you
thank
have any
you.
question, any additional questions?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Senator Erickson? Okay, Senator Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I echo many of Senator Owen's comments, especially around thanking you for the work you do and concern about the FTEs. I'm wanting to propose looking at FTEs basically as we do a pay-go. So I think we need to reallocate FTEs to divisions like yours that need them, but find them from people who aren't using theirs effectively. But my question is this, and it seems minor, but the Arctic security quizzes that I get quite frequently, can you tell me, are those part of a package deal? How much do they cost, and are they effective?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you for the comments and feedback about the work. On that question, ma'am, I'll have to defer you to the legislative branch, CETO, and their security engineer, because that is a program that is managed by them, not us. We do manage a similar program for the executive branch, and our costs with training and similar phishing exercises is I think the latest contract is still like $3 a seat per year, and we do require all employees and contractors to go through the security awareness training annually. But for your specific question, ma'am, that is through your legislative chief information technology officer and his staff. But they generally are effective in helping us identify places where we need to make improvements in knowledge and awareness.
Very good. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Fisher, you okay? Okay. Any other questions? Well, I have a couple, and this, the cybersecurity, I know in recent years, we've had problems with the cybersecurity at our colleges and universities. How has that improved?
Yep. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's a great question. So one of the requirements out of House Senate Bill 291 was to explore the possibility of incorporating them with the larger Kansas Information Security Office. During that assessment, that was just a little too big of something to unpack during the year timeframe we had to put this together, but we have greatly increased the collaboration with them and sharing of information. So our current CISO on the executive branch, Mr. John Godfrey, was a previous CISO at one of the Regents institutions at the University of Kansas Medical Center. So he has good relationships with them. And so that collaboration has increased since he's come on board with the region. So I can't speak specifically to what they're doing individually within the regions, but I do know we're working more closely with them.
Thank you. That was one of the concerns that we had. Back to the 8 million, and then that was we know we got to fund that for a short period of time, and then it goes to the agencies. One of the things that my first year here, we were tasked with the not fee-based agencies. And at that time, the cost from IT going to was not communicated well. Are we communicating to our fee-based agents or other agencies that, hey, next year, that 8 million or that additional cost will be borne by the agency or by your agency, not by the state? But is that being communicated? Are they expecting it? That's what I'm trying to get at.
If I may, sir, thank you for the question. So we have, in this case, it is mainly the cabinet agencies that are using this data center as a service that will be responsible for that. We communicated out with them about 2 years in advance. As we set rates in 2-year cycles, we communicated that we can do better and we're working to do better. There's some recommendations from our engagement on the Senate Bill 291 that specify some things we can do specifically around how we manage IT finances in the state, how we're tracking. One of the things we were able to accomplish through that exercise, this is the first year we've had a complete picture of IT spend in the state of Kansas. They went through about 500,000 ledger items to identify that, but with that is maybe we need some sort of working group that helps create more transparency in our expenses and what the bill back model looks like, and kind of having some sort of, lack of better terms, working group or board that is made up of various stakeholders to, understand the transparency and see, we're not just over collecting on an area to cover, for example. So there's some recommendations that we put forward that we're going to try and follow to better increase transparency and communication.
Appreciate that. I do have a request that came about yesterday.
Yes, sir.
And yesterday we had the museum here, and they were going over their budgets and their requests. And of course, they're getting a couple new areas, like the new vice president's house. He's coming on. That's coming online, and then we have the museum getting back up and into opening again. But they do not have anybody to do their IT. And they were asking for additional funds to cover an IT person. And I don't think it's a full-time position, because I said, who does that for you now? And he said, I do. So if we could, reach out to them. Maybe you could
Absolutely.
get an intern or one of these people that are half-time to help them out. Go find out what their need really is.
Yes, sir.
You could say, okay, I want to hire an $85,000 person, but I don't know exactly what I need them to do.
Yes, sir.
So I'd rather than spend the money for them, we said, we're going to ask you if you would reach out to them, see what they need, and then maybe help them out.
Absolutely, sir. And that's where we want to step in and assist those agencies from that perspective. So
We definitely appreciate that. Let's see if there's another question. One of the things that looks, if you look at these charts and you see that number going straight up, how do we level that off?
Yep. So thank you for question, sir, if I may. So that is part of some of the goal we want to try and accomplish with the report that came out of Senate Bill 291 that we put together. Is one of the key things we need to do is standardize on certain technologies and help find those places where we can find economies of scale and reduce costs, because the unfortunate reality is cost of IT is getting more expensive. So we need to be more strategic in the decisions we're making across the enterprise, not just within an individual agency. So as I mentioned, that's one of the kind of the taskings from the governor for me, is to find that 8 million through finding efficiencies and try and go that route as opposed to the appropriation. So that's why she did not approve that. So, and there is efficiencies to be found, as I mentioned, with our endpoint detection and response. By us procuring it through the security office for everybody, we're saving about $1 million a year on that product alone than as if individual agencies did. So that's one of the big things we're going to try and do. As you can see, that spike is primarily due to the change in what we're doing for cybersecurity, and that is a needed investment, unfortunately. And again, they're in the same boat. Their tools are becoming more expensive as well. But our goal is to help try and find efficiencies in other places of IT that may look small but add up in comparison to find that.
Since COVID, we said most agencies have went up. Now we want to level that off.
Yes, sir.
Bring it back down if we can. So that's our goal. Are there any other questions by anyone online? Thank you. Senator Owens, final questions?
Yeah, final question, and then a motion if you're ready for it, Mr. Chairman. So you mentioned twice that the governor didn't approve the $8 million because she expected you to find efficiencies. Are you here standing saying that those efficiencies are not to be found and that we have to write that $8 million?
No, sir. I'm saying I think we can find those efficiencies.
Okay, very good. Then, Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that we pass this budget out as presented without either of the enhancement requests.
Motion's
Second.
been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second? Any other discussion on the motion? Not? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Unanimous? So thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate your report. We appreciate staff and all their efforts. And this hearing is closed. Thank you very much.